exit polls. Everybody's going to be claiming at the end of the day that this candidate's up, this candidate's down, this subgroup is voting in greater numbers, or people are claiming that they're voting on a given issue, and that means that Trump is going to win or Trump is going to lose. And so in this video, as a former campaign operative, somebody who's trained a lot of people who've run these campaigns and been in a lot of these boiler rooms, I want to just break down for you what these exit polls are and what, if anything, you should do with them. At a high level, there are really two big sets of exit polls by two different services. One is the National Election Pool, which is by a company called Edison Research, and this is used by ABC News, CBS, CNN, NBC, Reuters, the Washington Post, the BBC, and there's another group called AP Votecasts, which is by a group called the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago, and this is used by Fox News, AP, the Wall Street Journal, and PBS News. They have different methodology, but that's a little bit less important than the fact that none of these results can be reported before 5 p.m. Eastern time on Election Day. Now, sometimes things leak out on X, Twitter, or via people's text messaging. If you got friends even in the vicinity of campaigns, people start claiming they've seen all kinds of exit polls. But preliminary reporting typically happens between 5 p.m. and 5:45 p.m. Eastern time, which is actually before some of the polls close. No exit poll results that can be indicative of the outcome of a race in a specific state can be reported until after the state's polls have closed. So as a general matter for you, there's a lot of sort of structures around the way that this exit poll data is guarded that makes it really hard for it to be of any use to you. And for that reason, these exit polls have been typically wrong. And I'll go through some of the reason, like even deeper reasons for these flaws in a second. But in 2020, Trump voters in battleground states were underrepresented. Trump outperformed exit poll predictions among Hispanic voters. 2016, exit polls missed rural, white, non-college educated Trump voters because they were less likely to participate in the exit polls. That year, early polls wrongly projected a lead for Clinton among independent voters. Early polls showed Clinton leading in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, states that Trump won all three of those. In 2012, early polls underestimated Obama's strength in Ohio and Florida, and early exit polls overestimated Romney's popularity with older voters. In 2008, the exit polls overestimated McCain's support and turnout in southern states and underestimated Obama's turnout among young and minority voters. I can keep going, but you get the picture. The reason why these exit polls tend to be pretty bad is, number one, there's a sampling bias. One of the organizations don't conduct the exit polls in all precincts, and most precincts are selected at random. So, for example, in 2004, Kerry seemed to be leading in Ohio because the pollsters had oversampled Democratic-leaning precincts, and networks hesitated to call Ohio for Bush as a result. This is similar to what happened in 2016. A second reason why these exit polls tend to be wrong is the margin of error. They just tend to have large margins of error. Third is a non-response bias. Basically, and this is true of all polls, but particularly exit polls, people have to be willing to share what their opinions are. And Trump supporters in 2016, for example, were less likely to agree to participate in exit polls. And this is what they call the shy voter effect. And this is something you can come to expect, especially since these exit polls are conducted by media operations, and certain segments of voters don't trust the media. Another reason why these exit polls tend to be flawed is that there's tremendous amount of early and absentee voting, and the amount of early and absentee voting tends to fluctuate wildly between campaigns. So 2020, you had the pandemic, which had all kinds of effects on early voting and absentee voting, and you also had Trump pushing his supporters to avoid early and absentee voting. He was criticizing early and absentee voting. Now he's encouraging his voters to do that, and Democrats are no longer, who are more pandemic conscious in some ways, are no longer facing those pressures. So those are just some of the factors here. There's another thing called the bandwagon effect, which sometimes goes into effect as reporting happens during the day and the day before on election day. And what tends to happen there is that the general conversation tends to affect how some people report their own votes. So the big picture here is don't trust the exit polls. They're of very little use. The best thing to do is just, take a deep breath, go for a walk, hang with your friends and family, ignore the noise. When the results start coming in, then you could start paying attention to actual votes as they're cast.